Every year, the National Urban League releases its highly anticipated report on the state of Black America. The report has become the national touchstone for the social and economic status of African American and Hispanic communities. Each year, we ask the question, what is the state of Black America? Today, our esteemed panelists will answer that question as it relates to Black media and the role of media as it relates to keeping our communities informed and empowered. Joining me, Sonia Lane, Editorial Director, Black Enterprise; George Curry, Editor-in-Chief of the National Newspaper Publishers Association's News Service; and Crystal High, Editor-in-Chief of Politic365.com. Welcome. So, media panel. Why aren't y'all doing your jobs educating Black people? No, I mean, let me start with you, George, because I think that there is, in many cases, a debate about how effective our print publications are in 2013. And we understand, as the Urban League is taking a look at this snapshot from 1963 to today, in 1963, our Black papers were incredibly important sources of information, incredibly trustworthy sources of information. How have you seen that evolution, and what role do you think Black newspapers can play now that no other outlets have the ability to play?
Well, as to trust, nobody trusts their publications more than our community trusts us, because they want to get it straight, and they're going to get it not undiluted. And that role is still the same. The problem with the Black newspapers is the same as newspapers in general. Lack of leadership, you get readership, you go into digital transition, and so the key is to marry the print with the digital, and that's a challenge facing us. But our role is still the same. Our role is crucial, and there's confusion about the Black press. When I define Black press, I'm talking about Black owned and operated. Because we see an increasing number.
Much smaller.
Well, but that's the reality.
But
we shouldn't be dealing with people who masquerade as Black press.
Uh-oh.
Own and operate. That's the Black press.
Well, but let's deal with that a minute. I can't take you off of that for a second.
Bring it on.
So we don't say the Black press are those that are journalists of integrity that are at outlets that aren't owned by Black folks?
Black press, owned and operated. See, anybody, this is, no.
So that's the difference between a Black journalist and the Black press.
Okay, let me hold on, young man.
Oh, here we go. You didn't want me to remind you. And now you put me on my plate.
The challenge is, and not just Black media, across the board, is because of the demographics, increasingly white-owned companies are going to buy up Black-owned operations. And so we shouldn't be confused about it when they do that. There's a difference in the product. And so when you talk about the Black press, the integrity is very, very important. It's because somebody buys something and say we're still Black when it's owned by a major white company, that's not the same thing.
Well, Crystal, let me let you chime in here, because the integrity piece is important. I mean, as we're talking about the vast majority of issues that the Black community is facing, whether it's unemployment, whether it's the lack of equity, whether it's the need to continue to attain educational opportunities, so hopefully we can level the playing field. There's a huge responsibility for those in this profession to be able to provide information. What do you feel like we're not doing effectively in 2013 to be able to turn the tide on empowering communities with information, but also giving them resources?
Well, so I think George brought up a great point when you start talking about this digital transition and how that's even impacting the media. And a lot of times, because you know this with Politic365, you know, our challenge is being this reputable news source that at the same time entertains people, right? Because you are up against the Twitters, the Facebooks, the Beyoncés, the Lil Waynes, and so there's this need almost to compete with entertainment value and educating people. And so in that process, you know, you have to strike that very difficult balance of how can I still stick to my core editorial mission, which is to inform, to educate, empower communities of color, and do so in a way that's actually engaging. So when we look at the role of Black media, particularly in the digital space, I think that's the challenge, is overcoming that hurdle so you don't feel like, oh, well, in order to sell, I have to sell out. You know, trying to grapple with that.
There's some truth to having to sell, pushing you further and further away from your core mission to be able to meet the needs and desires of advertisers. I mean, when we talk about Black Enterprise, even as a business and finance magazine, how has the brand over the last few years been able to navigate? We've got a real responsibility in a community that needs financial literacy, and to see images of business owners and financially successful people. Has that been difficult for BE, and has your digital platform helped with that?
Oh, absolutely. It's been difficult. That's to answer that question. But we've had to look at how we're delivering content instead of looking at what the medium is, and really focus on the content and figure out how to build a community around that. And so we've expanded. You know, the magazine had existed for 40 years, but also we have 3 events and we have 2 television shows, so we've had to diversify. If we were just relying on the print publication, we probably would be closed already. I mean, to be honest.
And that's a key. First of all, you don't have to sell out. I really don't think you have to do that. But what newspapers and magazines and all black publications and media outlets have to do is find different streams of revenue. Yeah. You just can't get it from that core product anymore. You have to have an Essence Film Festival, to have a BE TV show. You got to do something different. And an old way of just doing it, you just can't do it and be viable.
With the same content.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And beyond the content development and the business side of this, there still is a responsibility, hopefully, to educate and empower.
Absolutely.
Let's talk politics a little bit for a minute. As we talk about the first term of President Obama moving into the second, did the black press and then black journalists do their job as it related to effectively holding accountable this president, not from a cultural standpoint, but from a political one? George, I'll let you.
I think that we're in a place we've never been before. We never had a black president. And I think in some ways, black press has given Obama a pass. And I think black politicians are given a pass in all ways. Again, it's a place you've never been before. Maxine Waters said, we go out and criticize and you're going to be mad at us, And so, but at the same time, and you get the former chairman of the CBC saying if he had been white, we'd been marching around the White House. We got to hold this president accountable. I mean, you can be proud, but I don't care who's in that White House. You want to know, what are you doing for black people? And that's our role and that's our responsibility.
And is there also a responsibility to be the protector when it comes time to? There's been a ton of false information that's come out about this president, about his policies, targeted at our community.
No question.
And can tell me, I mean, Crystal, you've been doing this work through this first administration. Where has there been a place where it was because of the black press that the black community was able to check some information and have it shift back in the right direction?
You know what, I think one of the greatest examples we saw, particularly last year, was just around the whole voter ID issue, because that's where we saw a lot of pushback, right? Because you have the black press, you have black bloggers, you have other digital outlets, magazines, like rallying around an issue that said, look, no. Don't even worry about what people are telling you. You need to, be aware of these issues for these particular reasons. So I think that was one place where we saw a lot of engagement, where it was very necessary. And particularly around black bloggers, I think that's where we've seen a lot of even critique of President Obama, even if it's not coming from a specific outlet. You saw a lot of vocal engagement around, well, what is the administration doing and what can they do differently? And those little sound bites got fed into broader media outlets that I think helped to balance some of the dialogue that was going on.
The coverage of Trayvon Martin was covered locally, but it was the black press, black bloggers that really made that a national.
Jordan, before you come in, I want to ask Sonia, how important are partnerships with organizations like the Urban League? And so I know that both of your organizations have partnerships with the Urban League. How does that help create content that empowers and directs people without there having to be an editorial spin one way or the other?
Well, I think that that's what is going to make this mission even more palatable and even stronger. Partnerships are extremely important. We don't tend to do those really well, I think, in the black community, but I think that this partnership that we're developing with the National Urban League and with other media partners is extremely important, because we understand how it helps us fulfill our mission, but of course it helps the Urban League, of course, fulfill their mission as well.
And it's ultimately about the pipelining, right, of information, right? Where we tend to lose out in our communities is a lack of access to information. And the Urban League is one of the greatest repositories of information, particularly when it comes to economics, job creation, employment opportunities, entrepreneurship. And so being able to work with an organization like this, where you can get ready access to the information our communities needs, that's huge.
George, what's the next phase? I mean, we've seen a huge shift, not just in media outlets, black media outlets, but how the community consumes information. What do you feel like is the next wave, and the wave that black press and black journalists need to get in front of so we don't get caught unable to effectively talk to our own folks?
I think a lot of papers may not want to hear this, or companies may not want to hear this. We got to merge in some of these places. We just can't be our individual island and be out there. In order to survive, we're going to have to come together, and then it's better to have 20% or something huge than 100% that's something that's non-existent. I think that's going to be one of the hardest things we're going to do. I think also we're going to see a different kind of coverage of Obama in the second term, because people know he doesn't have to run again. You have to worry about whether the other side is beating him up. We're going to hold him more accountable. And so I think that those are the kinds of things we're going to see, and you're going to continue to see the black press dealing with the digital, because that's how people get their information.
Well, Crystal,
and we got to do a lot more of that and do it better.
Chime in on that a little bit, because you've got what is still arguably a young website, a young brand that's had considerable growth. What do you feel like the next wave of challenges are, and what do digital journalists, or digital media for that matter, whether they're journalists or not, have to begin doing differently in order to speak to our community with a level of integrity?
I think it's really about targeting your audience very specifically. So being clear from the outset, what is the niche? Who is your tribe that you're trying to, cultivate, and target them in an aggressive way, right? Gone are the days when you can just create something and people are going to come to you. Like, they don't do that anymore. It's about, how can I get my content, how can I get my platform, how can I get my message in front of you as an audience member that's going to be receptive and do something with this message. So if you're somebody who is only interested in entertainment, if I want to talk to you, how do I spin the kind of content we're creating so that politics is now entertaining to you, that public policy becomes something.
How do you do that? When you take into consideration that Atlanta Housewives is getting a hell of a lot more views than
elect Mimi
Politics
Leaks
Nation
to something.
No, but seriously, I mean, do you just throw your hands up and say, look, this is no longer a community that even wants this kind of content?
We can't, because that can't be our standard. It's like, God bless them, but the housewives cannot be who define what black women look and feel like. That can't be our gold standard. So we have to be able to push back about that. And I think you have enough smaller pockets of conversations going. You talk about partnerships and how people are looking to work together. It's this notion of coming together to reclaim our communities, to say, you know what, we're not going to take that anymore.
I think it's a stereotype that black people aren't interested and they don't want the information. And so it's important that we keep putting it out there and find those communities that you talked about.
And it's the how.
And it's the how, yeah.
And it's essential, we define what community, not somebody else. You're going to always have the eyeballs for the so-called reality shows, but our role is to provide real reality in the real sense, and that is empowering our community and accurately portraying them the way they should be portrayed.
As we look at the next 50 years, what's going to be the greatest challenge? And not from a business standpoint and keeping the doors open, but of truly being able to be, I think, George, what you talked about, black newspapers had become, which is truly trusted and reliable voices in a marketplace that relies on so much sensationalism to keep the doors open. How do we do that in the next 50 years so that we still have a black press, black media vehicles that can help us be empowered, not just entertained?
The key,
and then that's the last question for each of you.
The key is to maintain our credibility by providing accurate, insightful information, and not ever losing that brand, because there's so much stuff out there that's unreliable. If I go to Black Enterprise, I know I can depend on, or go to NNPA or Politics 360, that you maintain a reputation for quality, and they know that when they turn to you, they can get the real deal. And that is the biggest strength we have, our credibility.
You know what, I think one of our challenges is going to be maintaining the black identity in a space that tells us that multiculturalism is the norm, and if you don't have Hispanics in your mix, if you're not working with Asian Americans, Native Americans, you have no identity. So the challenge for us is to,
no market share.
No market share, and it's like, well, we have a $2 trillion buying power. I think that's plenty of market share. We're the most brand loyal consumers on the planet. So making sure that we leverage our economic power, leverage our community strength, to say, even in this multicultural space where we are integral players, we have a voice. And that really takes leadership, from a grass tops and a grassroots level. And that's not something that's necessarily media specific, but it's something that the media can do in tandem with our leaders to really help reclaim that role, that place for our black communities.
Sonia, we got 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think we need to leverage, like what you're saying, in a global sense, and looking at blacks in London, blacks in Brazil, and the whole continent of Africa. I think we can still, they're going through what we went through in the 60s. Absolutely. And so we can leverage that internationally and still remain powerful.
Definitely speaking my language, but also you are the media. And so understand that with a tablet or a phone, you have the ability to tell stories that only you can tell. Let's tell them with a level of integrity. I want to thank my panelists for being a part of that integrity-filled media world. Please, you all, share this web series with your social media friends and followers, and let's continue the solution session using the hashtag SOBA13, and then you get involved. The State of Black America web series is presented by AT&T. Thank you, AT&T, for your continued support of the National Urban League. We also want to thank Comcast for their production support of the State of Black America web series. Together, we are empowering communities and changing lives. Please join me every Sunday from 5 to 7 on my digital show, The Intersection, at www.bliss.fm, or follow me on Twitter at Jeff's Nation. For more information on the State of Black America and to purchase the book or become a member of the National Urban League, please visit them at nul.org.
Hello, National Urban League. My name is Cynthia Marshall, Senior Vice President for Human Resources for AT&T. On behalf of our more than 240,000 employees, we're excited to support, for the third year, the National Urban League's State of Black America report and discussion. Our commitment to diversity is vital to the success of our company. For AT&T, an innovative, diverse, and competitive workforce ultimately begins with providing better educational opportunities for everyone. And that is why we remain supportive of the State of Black America's report. I am reminded of Maya Angelou's beautiful statement about all threads in the tapestry being equal in value, no matter what their color. Or the poignant words of Mikhail Gorbachev, that peace is not unity in sameness, but unity in diversity. For AT&T, this understanding of diversity's value is one of our bedrock convictions. Our partnership with you underscores our deep commitment to diversity and empowerment. And so today, we salute the National Urban League on another successful, substantive, and thought-provoking report. Job well done, Mark Morial.